How do you live your faith as the CEO in a secular space where I'm sure not everybody's Catholic?
Absolutely not. Maybe we can open a maternity home, we said, you know? Well, no one can open a maternity. People don't open maternity homes. Sure they do. And how could you spend your day thinking about what I don't have when you and I both been to Mexico City, Chalco, right? And we've seen what those kids come in with. Nothing.
What is your money really supporting? In this episode of 11 Talents, Chris McMahon reveals how Catholic leaders can align wealth, investing, and generosity with the mission of Christ. Welcome to the 11 Talents podcast.
Chris McMahon, thank you for being on the 11 Talents podcast. You've been a longtime member of Legatus, and I would say that you are the quintessential example of being a Legatus member.
Okay. I was worried where you're heading. I'll take that. Thank you very much.
In Latin, a Legatus is an ambassador. I share your story often because I think you've been a strong Catholic your whole life. Let's start there. You've been a strong Catholic your whole life, but I think through Legatus and through all these other experiences,
no question,
you've now jumped into the deep and are a great example to all of us as to what we should be putting our talents to.
You're very kind, Stephen.
So from my perspective, and I think Molly, your wife, would agree with me on that. So tell me a little bit about you and Molly. You've got
we have five kids. So I grew up, I'm the youngest of four. I'm 61 years old. So just give me a minute to think about that. So we all grew up, and my mother married my father, and my father was an alcoholic. So they divorced when I was 4 years old. My father then died when I was 8.
Wow.
So I went a long time. My mother never remarried. And my mother, we're at the Catholics to the Shore conference that we may talk about in a few minutes. My mother, God bless her, who's going to be 90 in August, is here.
Wow.
So
I look forward to meeting her.
Wonderful. Yeah, so it's really a beautiful thing. So my mother raised the four of us alone. And we had faith, but my mother had to work. So I'm an expert on mid-70s to early 80s television. I'm an absolute expert. Well, I did my PhD in Gilligan's Island, right? So I really wasn't outstanding in any way, Stephen, in my life as an athletically, academically, socially. I really wasn't a standout in anything. And I went to Duquesne, which is in Pittsburgh, as a freshman. And as I was there, I was like every college kid, kind of a dummy, you could say. And I met my bride. She was a sophomore. Pardon me, I was a sophomore and she was a freshman. Okay. And I knew relatively early on, relatively early on that I was hopeful to marry her because she was like, no, I met before. And this is like 1983, going back a little bit. I knew I wanted to marry her. And so we, I did dumb things. Thankfully, my wife was very forgiving. My bride always says something which I love, and I think it's such a beautiful thought. She says, don't judge the man by the boy. And I spent a lot of my time acting like a boy, Stephen, not like a man. And I really love her and her ability to really wait. And she was beautiful. She was fantastic. So
don't judge a man by the boy. So basically, don't judge a man by their stupid, childish, immature activities or actions.
Exactly the point. That is it.
Just make sure I have that under.
And I love that because she's seen me. We've known each other since we were 17 years old. So we were married to about 2 years out of college. She moved back to Pittsburgh, and I was selling insurance of all things because again, I wasn't anything academically, or it really hadn't done anything I think would be outstanding by anybody's scorecard. But I married a wonderful person, and I married out of my weight class. And I was very delighted for her to be my wife. And we got pregnant probably about 6 months or a year after we got married. And I thought, this is what it's supposed to be. So we were 24, having our first child. And I remember thinking to myself, you have to act like a man. You have to provide for your family. You have to. And I was fortunate that during that time, our strength, our faith started to grow stronger. So in a relatively short time, we had our 5 children, which is wonderful. Now they're 35 to 25 years old, all living in New York City, which is amazing. And we have my son Will, who works at our firm now, which I'm sure we'll talk about, has twins who were just born. So we're just so ecstatic about that.
Too, okay.
And then our oldest, Katie's having a baby any day. So we may have to end this interview shortly because I didn't think up. So it's really great. So we've really been blessed. And we think about, I spent time early in my life doing a lot of why me? Even though I had this beautiful wife and this beautiful family, why aren't I more successful? Why aren't I more gifted athletically? Anything, you can make the list, right? Why don't I have more, have the same abilities other people have? And I realized that just like the theme of this meeting, Catholics to the Shore, it's this is all you need, I believe.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about
needing nothing else. I'm sorry.
Yeah, needing nothing else. Who was it in your life that modeled fatherhood for you?
Great question.
To be now you've got, I think you said 3 boys.
Yeah, 3 boys, 2 girls.
3 boys that you did not get to experience from your father.
It's a great question. I remember my mother, when I was a little boy, she said you need to have, and we had a who's who of not to have examples in our family all over the place. So my mother took me to Kim's Judo and Karate in Brentwood, Pennsylvania, and said, "This is a big strapping man. You need to learn how to be a man." I remember her saying this. So that was when I was 7, and I was probably there about 3 weeks ago. So that was one interesting one, which was funny. So Mr. Kim was this big strapping Korean hulking man who taught me how. I spent a lot of time there as I was growing up through judo and karate and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I've done this my whole life, and I've done more things with that. Well, he was one, and then as I got into college, certainly some of the priests at Duquesne, a couple I'm still close with. I still do a lot of volunteer work at Duquesne, and then I think probably one of the some of my early clients when I first met them, they were kind of modeling that behavior. But I remember vividly one of my dear friends from college, his father's. I met with him because we were thinking about leaving. Can you imagine leaving the glamour of the life insurance business? Oh, yeah. And he said, let's get together and start a business. And he was very entrepreneurial. He was somewhat famous at that time. He was a national radio broadcaster. And he said to me at that time, and I'll never forget it, and I love Molly, and that's the only thing I was very clear on. I love Molly, and I didn't want to screw that up. And he said to me, we'll open this business, and it'll be successful. And I was walking away for nothing.
Yeah.
And he said, and I can tell you, the subject changed. He said, I'll tell you something, no man is ever faithful to his wife. And that struck me. And I was 26, and I thought, what a horrible thing to say. Today, I'd probably think to myself, boy, this poor guy, and this where he is, that's what he thinks is true.
Right.
And that's the dark and the evil one, I think, really, more than anything else. But I thought to myself at that moment, this guy's a fool. Even though I admired him greatly, I thought he's built his whole life on this odd, fallacy of what a man is. Yeah. And I thought that was so strange. So I had some very clear role models. I started identifying as what I didn't want to be to some degree. So a kind of combination of those things brought me there. And over time, I always had some mentors. I liked hanging around guys that I admired. So through business and other things, I started doing more of that. But it was hard to model that behavior. So I made many, many mistakes. And I'm grateful my sons and daughters have forgiven those to a large degree, Yeah.
So Molly stayed at home and raised the kids with you. You started, though, your own firm in wealth management.
Wealth management, yeah, about 1990. What happened was, and I should really mention, when I looked at my bride, one of the many reasons I loved her father and mother, to me, were what I thought a married couple was supposed to be. My father-in-law was quiet and intellectual and loved his wife with all of his heart, And it's so funny. I remember I was there at the birthday party one time early on. This is, that was our big vacation. We had no money, so we'd drive to Philadelphia from Pittsburgh and stay at their house. Yeah. And I remember she was doing something and she walked by him, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, who's still with us, God bless her. And I remember he just kind of touched on her arm just for a second. And I said, I think that's the meaning of life. I can describe it, that intimacy.
Regrounding himself, right?
That
with
intimacy
the connection
of who she is and what he was all about. It spoke volumes about who he was and what we're supposed to be. So that, I think, was really a telling moment for me. So Molly, the kids are, I forgot what, I'm sorry, what you asked me, I apologize.
Tell me a little bit about the wealth management business. Firm, sure. Yeah.
So what happened was I was early in the lowest stages of financial services. And I knew that I wanted to provide things for people on a more meaningful basis. And I also said, how can I have an impact in a more significant way? So I thought, why don't we start this firm? So I started, initially I was only myself and one half-time assistant, not the massive, firm that we have today. But I thought to myself, we should provide full financial services, and these firms I thought weren't situated. They were generally they were product firms. They produced things, products that you sold. And over time, I realized that wasn't an appropriate way to really build deep relationships. At that time, the idea of a registered investment advisory firm or fiduciary firm was a relatively new idea. But we started a registered investment advisory firm in Pittsburgh, and over the years, fortunately, we were able to, bring in, hundreds of millions of dollars of assets through deep relationships. And over time, Stephen, I realized something. Those people were people that held the same values that I did. Early on, I thought, no, it's everybody. Open the funnel wide and they'll come. And if you don't align with someone, it's okay because you're just doing business. But I realized that never worked. It never worked. It was somebody who had to admire and admired you. And when I really got into that, probably in my early 30s, it started to really click together and make this whole thing start to work.
Wow. So what was it though? I mean, you ran a successful firm.
Yes.
And then at some point you realize, people are investing in things that I don't agree with,
yes,
that they don't agree with. Like, what was it in your life that made that turning point?
It's a great question. There's two things that made it. One, I was in somebody's kitchen and I was starting to have some real success, and I felt like I was, starting to take myself pretty seriously. And I remember it said on their refrigerator, don't let your rosaries touch my ovaries.
Oh,
and I was in the kitchen thinking, this is someone's home, and I thought to myself, struck me like I said, she talked about murdering. And it's the first time I really thought this way. Because I always thought, well, we shouldn't have let our opinions into politics, don't discuss religion or politics. I thought, my goodness, this person's saying she wants to, the right to murder children in the womb is extraordinarily important to her, the most important thing, to the detriment of everything else. I said, that was a decision I made. I can't work with people like this any longer. So I started living a little bit louder. One of the things I did is very important is joining Legatus. So Molly and I first said, we want to get deeper in our faith. These 5 kids were just coming up for air. The younger ones were probably about 10 or 12. So we had a minute to go out one night a week. And as we started,
well, it's important for you to go out once a month, right? I mean, just
absolutely.
for you all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we didn't do a ton of that. We would put them to bed. And I remember we had no money for a long time. There was a video game you'd play online called You Don't Know Jack. So we'd put everyone to bed and play this. And it was like a fun trivia game that made fun of if you got the answers wrong. That was our big date night. Well, so then joining Legatus is transformational for us.
Yeah.
Because what happened was I realized I started meeting like-minded people that I started to admire more, people that I thought were living their lives, their faith life out loud. I said, I want to do that.
So building that community of people that are going to, as the adage is, rising tides lifts all ships. If everybody's on the same wavelength, iron sharpens iron, and you're going to do that. And that's what happened with you.
What happened with me. And I've always been more of a conciliatory relationship person. And I've also wanted to be, it's hard to believe that when I say that, but I over time Molly and I then said, well, what should we do? Maybe we can open a maternity home, we said. Well, no one can open a maternity. People don't open maternity homes. Sure they do. There's a whole list of them out there you can find. But I said to myself, and I say this all the time, I'm exhausted by people saying, this is on my heart, or they don't say that, I'm thinking of doing this, but, or the naysayer will say, is it sustainable? I believe the word is it sustainable is the devil chirping in our ear. Because ultimately, if you look at the S&P 500, Stephen, I think under 10% of the stocks that were listed on the original S&P 500 exist today. Shocking.
So what's the right saying?
I'd say cast the nets out throw the nets out for a catch. Go to the deep, right? JP2 said it better than I just said it there.
Duke and Altum.
Yes, that's the right answer.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter if it's sustainable.
Yeah.
When my friends say to me, I want to feed the hungry, I want to open a homeless center to feed the hungry, but it's not going to be sustainable. What does that mean exactly? Nothing in this life is sustainable. Every business ever open comes to a close. If you're able to feed one hungry person, or in our case, house one pregnant woman that would otherwise have abortion vulnerable woman, it's worth doing.
Yeah.
So I think the Mary's Place, it's been now, I think 10 years. We've had about 180 women through there. Our communities ride around it. We've had volunteers, these beautiful nuns from Nigeria.
Yeah.
The Sisters of Life have been transformational for us in our relationship, our deep relationship with them. And that's all the fruits of this Legatus trade.
So you ended up starting a home for women that were likely going to choose abortion if they didn't find something to take care of them in their darkest moment when they needed somebody. So you opened a home for them.
And then we went to our
Pittsburgh.
friends. Yeah, we went to our friends and said, hey, we're going to open Mary's Place. And I asked the diocese, and they're great, good friends. We'd like to buy a building, but they're very difficult, to move a large bureaucracy, even though they had dozens of empty buildings.
Yeah.
Some Capuchin friars said, we're selling our building, and it's got a chapel in it. And I went to see him, and Father Tim was the greatest guy. He said, Chris, we love your mission, and we're going to be on board with you.
Yeah.
And I said, well, and the listing of I remember like it was yesterday, the listing of the building was, whatever it was, $700,000.
Yeah.
And I said, we don't have $700,000. Father goes, how much do you have? I said, 400-ish. And he said, we need 451.
451.
Whatever it was.
Very exact.
Yeah. And I said, I went back to him and said, okay. And the whole time, the realtors are trying to turn it into a business. That was very telling for me. The realtor's calling me saying, I just talked to them and they are very upset. I said, well, I was just at mass with him this morning in his private chapel. He wasn't upset at all. They were trying to turn it into something it wasn't. And that was just their way of trying to get involved because those Capuchins wanted that to be continuing the mission, and we have.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you've got a chapel, you want to keep it into the faith. You don't want to have to decommission it. And not just for the time it takes to do that, but because this is a place of worship. You want to continue the faith. Yeah.
And the women see the Blessed Sacrament there, and it's transformational. It's unbelievable.
So you're bringing in women that are from all walks of life.
All walks of life. Not normally, from the affluent suburbs normally. It's not, we thought for a minute we'd see more college kids. We haven't seen much of that. It's mostly people that are really have issues with drug addiction, or they're in the middle of the stage, issues with the law, issues with family. These are people that are broken, but then we always notice that as well. That's all of us.
Yeah.
That's all of us. And it's been really a beautiful thing.
Well, so I want to go back to what you said about, and I think this relates to a lot of our members and those watching, that perhaps businessmen and women get paralyzed by applying the business model to a charity or something that they want to do for the good. And that's what you said, right?
Yes,
I mean, that's so what's your advice to them if they are kind of just coming into this, they're having that moment in their lives, whether you want to call it halftime or whether you want to call it an epiphany. They're like, all right, now it's time for me to give back. I feel called to this. What's your advice to them? Just go and try it? I mean, I know you said cast into the deep, but that's yeah.
I'm going to do it again. He said, be not afraid. That's what we have to do. I would start with this though. I'm a doom and gloom guy. What's the worst thing that could happen? We'll be up in Mary's place. The worst thing that could happen is we'd sell that building to somebody else.
Yeah.
And if we made any money on it, that money would go to the Sisters of Life. That's what we knew that was the worst case scenario. So how detrimental is that? So I don't mind looking at the worst case scenario, but I love saying, hey, look, this is on my heart. It's on my heart for a reason. I have the capacity and the time to do it. The other thing too is don't underestimate the value of that circle they built. All these Catholic leaders, Legatus members particularly, have enormous circles. And when we raise the flag and say, I am doing this, it is shocking how many people rally around it.
Well, when you build yourself into that community of people that are all aligned and you say, hey, I need help, I think all too often we don't ask for each other for help.
Yes.
Not only is our world becoming more isolated because of technology and phones and, COVID was a big part of that. But I think we then don't ask our neighbor for a hand when we need a hand, and we need help and we need laborers to work in the fields for the harvest. Right?
Every time I send an email out saying, guys, we're doing lawn work at Mary's place, it looks like a BMW dealership. All these guys from the suburbs come over. By the way, I love this. None of them have shovels, me included, in their own garages because the landscape guy, they stop at Rollier's Hardware, buy shovels. They help us for a minute and he leave the shovel. Say, I don't want to take this home. We have 50 new shovels at that place. But people want to be of help. They want to be of service, and they're looking for the to be asked. They're hoping to be asked. Some people don't have the inertia, but God's people are entrepreneurs. They're risk takers. They're business people. The worst case scenario at the end of the day, if Mary's Place closed or any of these other initiatives Molly and I are working on closed, and then if Catholics, it sure never happened again, whatever it is.
Well, and I think that you either want to build, the soup kitchens, you want to build the maternity homes, et cetera, or you want to support them. You want to be the background funder, which we need those people too.
Absolutely.
But let's go back a little bit to the wealth advisement.
Yes,
so you had a great firm there, and then you had this change of heart and said, people are investing in things. Tell me a little bit about the wealth advising world and people think that they're investing in good things.
Oh boy, it's heartbreaking.
And you actually created some pretty high-tech technology to address this, right?
It's really been a great transfer because that's exactly what happened. As our faith got deeper and deeper, I became more offended by this kind of anti-Catholic sentiment wrapped up in what was called DEI, right? It was a big thing, DEI, and saying, well, let's be open and kind to everybody with the exception of Catholics. Our values are being dismissed as hateful. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
When the Catholics invented so much charity. So we thought, how can we work this through? And we started looking at the landscape. Perhaps we can offer it through our firm currently. We said, no, we have to start a new firm called Aquinas Wealth Advisors. And we developed this technology, which we invested quite a bit in, because the goal was that people could see for themselves. Because before this, financial advisors would take one of two approaches. You can't really align for your faith because it's impossible to do. Mm-hmm. And even if you try to do it somewhat, your returns will be poor. We found those both to be completely false. Those are perpetuated by the industry. And secondly, if someone said, yes, I had a faith-aligned investment, you kind of have to take their word for it. Maybe they had a mutual fund that they called Catholic, or maybe the advisor was a very person of faith. And we see lots of very, very faithful advisors unknowingly putting people in investments which are completely counter to their faith. Our tool, people can go on our website, AquinasWealth.com, and link their account and get a report of exactly what they're supporting. The technology allows that today. Mm-hmm. Our goal is to transform the world. We're hoping to say, these companies aren't giving, it's not even their businesses, Stephen, it's their social activism. They're giving money.
Yeah. So basically you're talking about like shell companies that are called, XYZ, but in reality, they're supporting adult stores, I
would say 30% of the diocese,
pornography, et cetera.
40% of the diocese in the United States, and many individual investors own an index, which is a pool of stocks. One of those stocks is RCI Hospitality Group. Oh, RCI Hospitality Group. It sounds like a hotel chain.
Yeah.
Like people would come for a conference like this. They own a series of gentlemen's clubs, strip clubs around the country. Yeah. And also, they were just cited last year in the state of New York. They were inviting state of New York auditors for years to visit their clubs in Las Vegas.
Wow.
To avoid paying taxes. So not only were they in the business to show how it's a publicly traded company. Mm-hmm. Think about that for a second. Yeah. Not only in the business of this, but also going as far to avoid taxes by bringing these people in. And these folks are unknowingly doing it. The great news is those days are over. We can tell exactly what people are doing. But Stephen, it's not just these companies that are in these businesses. It's companies that have been rewarded. They might be we found a tool and die company in the Midwest, huge, publicly traded, that was giving enormous amounts of money to Planned Parenthood. Why? Because people are asking to do it. They thought that was reasonable. They checked that box. So, social activism, completely inconsistent with the faith of Catholics. Mm-hmm. Companies, when we tell them loud and long enough that they can't do this any longer, we will be able to pull them back to at least neutral. They don't need to give money to Catholic charities, but we need to pull them back to neutral.
I often have heard Catholics suggest that we need to be, more like the Mormons or the Jews, supporting our,
I agree with that.
Our other people that are in our faith, and what they do. And do you see that happening?
I do see it happening. It's one of our biggest hurdles is people that are in the investment industry now working for companies that are so dyed in the wool against this, that they have no other place other than to say, that's not real. So they're denying it because sometimes unknowingly denying it because they've been told things by their companies. But yes, I think in general, we need to do a better job, just like these other folks do. The great news is those tools now exist. Aquinas Wealth Advisors, so we think we do a very good job of it. But our goal is to transform the marketplace to bring us back to that original Christian values that were involved. Company, Stephen, 20 years ago, can you imagine a CEO writing a letter to his shareholders saying, I have great news, shareholders. We just bought an online service. It was another version like OnlyFans, which is is tragic, right? What happening with OnlyFans, and we're creating a safe place for content providers to create content as if they're in a room sketching, cold sketch, doing paintings. We've never done it. There's we need to bring back this value system, and that's what I'm so excited about is this technology we're talking about. And also this wave of Catholicism. These young generations refusing this. They're saying life is more than this. I was chosen for a reason. He knew every hair on my head before I was born. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to take that step into the church and hopefully into Legatus someday.
Yeah. What was it about the pro-life message that struck you and caused you to be so supportive of the Sisters of Life and get into starting? Was there anything that led you to want to be more involved?
I was doing the dumb things at the beginning. I shouldn't say the dumb things. I remember I was on a board for the symphony, and I was like, I thought to myself, I have literally, I think that music's fine, but I have no desire. I thought, what am I supporting here?
Yeah, I can imagine seeing you sit through a symphony, like 5 minutes and then I'm off, like.
What are we doing here? So I think I said, what is important to us? What Molly and I got together and said, what is important to us? And I think maybe it's because of our home life, but I thought to myself, the most vulnerable are the least protected. And I remember thinking to myself, we need to do something to help the the most vulnerable. And I think I am so proud to be part of the pro-life movement, but we have to be careful. Sometimes you go to pro-life walks and it's, I always said a few years ago, the Democrats had all the cool actors and actresses on their side, right? And we had Scott Baio. Not that he's not cool, but that's all we had, a couple of decades ago. Well, now it's at least we're seeing some conservative folks come back. But I think we need to act more. Sometimes we weaponize our own faith, which is a huge mistake, and our own values. We need to say, look, we're all in this together. We want to protect the babies of this life. Who doesn't look at a newborn baby and say, a beautiful child, say, this is worthy of my protection. So I think it was having children of our own, seeing some of the abortions that really affected people. We were with the sisters last night, and they said that 1 in 3 women in America, not 1 in 4, 1 in 3 women now have suffered abortion.
Wow.
So I don't know, it is the genocide of our time. It is the Holocaust of our time. And I think that got us going. And then of course we went up to New York about 15 or 18 years ago in the middle of all this and said, hey, can we stop by and meet the Sisters of Life? And like everyone else, we were smitten and they are trying to get cease and desist orders against us probably now.
Well, I think the beautiful thing that they do, and so many of the young orders, I talked to them a little bit about these new orders that are popping up, but the idea of accompaniment,
beautiful,
as well as joy, and you mentioned on these walks, I think that's one of the things in terms of weaponizing, it seems like we're these angry Catholics and it's our way or the highway. And, but that's not how, we know this just within our own families. That's not how you're going to get somebody to listen to you, first of all, but then to see your perspective and your side and hopefully come to the realization like Mother Mary Concepta's dad did at that one point in time when he was, asked if the baby's still alive, after he had performed an abortion. That just strikes you to the core.
I think about that. You say it today, it affects me so much.
Yeah.
He was either a murderer or a liar.
Yeah.
But that moment changed him forever. And I think that's the opportunity we all have. And I do think the pro-life, we have to not weaponize it. We have to live with joy and we have to be positive. I started a group maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago at my church called Bromentum. So Bromentum. And any Legatus membership.
Is that copyrighted? Bromentum?
I'm going to live that one out there. We're going to have it. Because I wanted it to be light and airy because so many men's groups weaponize religion. And if you don't come, we hate you. Yeah. It's a burden. So it's very hard to do. So I said, who's the cool priest in the diocese? And I said to him, he's a friend of mine. I said, hey, when you do Friday morning masses, can you do them? And he arranged to come to the church where we're going to do it in this big centralized church. And he'll say mass. And over the years, the other priests have said mass. Normal mass, it's a scheduled mass.
Yeah.
We get downstairs, we have coffee. We have, and it started by just, what was the thing about today? Sometimes a priest comes down, sometimes he wouldn't. He doesn't lead it. It's men just talking. Well, over years, it's developed into this incredible thing. We have guys from 70 to about 35 that come in. Some come in with very, very heavy things. But it's funny, with a group of men, we start off, I always like to, a little bit of, like I'd say poking each other a little bit like men do in a good way, and a little bit of humor. It's been a really beautiful thing. One of my friends was today sent me an email saying there's 32 guys here this morning.
Wow.
And some needing this brotherhood.
Every Friday. Yeah.
Every Friday.
Well, they're looking for community. And I feel like, going back to what you talked about with the lack of your father and then getting into judo.
Yes.
What are you doing and telling your sons who now are having their own kids of how to keep their kids, especially the boys, how to raise them as masculine boys? Because I think that's partly an issue that we have here in the U.S. with even our priestly vocations. They're not masculine men. And if I have, my son, he wants to see a masculine man, like a Father Mike Schmitz type that is going to embody what he wants to be as a priest, hopefully. What are you telling your sons?
A couple of different things. I think I say socialize with priests because I think it's very important to do that. Yeah. So I say as a Legatus member, I say to all of them, take your phone out and put an FR and see how many names come up. If there's not 25 names that come up, you're not doing it right. All of us should know 20, 25 priests. And say, and we're going to go play golf, which I'm not great at, as you know, or let's go get a pizza or I'm going to ask him to come. He doesn't have to come, but he wants, because what makes him more masculine, more normal? Being around other guys. Yeah. So that's our responsibility as Catholic leaders. Yeah. And I would say also, I say to them all the time, marry somebody like your mother. Marry somebody who's kind and nurturing and beautiful and forgiving. Yeah. That's who you marry. And I know your wife, Chris, is beautiful and a fabulous person, a mother of 7 and incredible. But I say marry that person and I say, and then act like a man. And I think that's hard. It is don't apologize, be kind, and also it's a partnership in marriage.
Right.
But I think we have our roles. And I hope my sons, two of our sons just joined us in our business, which I'm very surprised by. One was Wall Street, one was in technology, and they both joined. And I said to my wife, we were at a presentation the other day, we had some of our whole team was there. They were both there too. And I thought to myself, wow, how did this happen so quickly?
So you you have a secular firm.
Yes.
How do you live your faith as the CEO in a secular space where I'm sure not everybody's Catholic?
Absolutely not. I had someone tell me in our secular firm, they said, I'm concerned because this lawyer suggested to me that your faith overrides every decision you make. And I said, help me. I was about to start to rationalize it away, like I learned in sales rationalization school, and I stopped. I said to him, Steve, say that again. And I'd like you to listen as you say it, please, with me. He said, and this lawyer was a very kind of cunning, non-religious lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Deal. Which you carefully could fall in that trap. And I was in that trap at one time. And he said, you use faith for the basis of all your decisions in your secular firm. And I said, would you want someone who uses faith for all their decisions to be making decisions on your behalf of your finances? Because we are advisors or fiduciaries. And he said, absolutely. That's it. So when he heard the question again, he said, of course, that would be the basis I would want someone to. So I think what I've done is I haven't run from it. I've wrapped myself in it. I laugh because someone said to me, you with their concern, you have a lot of religions. I said, you couldn't possibly. I Googled myself the other day and it said, I do a lot of secular media, as you know. Mm-hmm. It literally said Chris McMahon, offered on Fox News and Bloomberg, known for Catholic, that was the next sentence, known for investing in Catholic investing.
Is that not how you would want to go down? When you die, you want to be known as a Catholic. Like you actually walk the walk.
I would want my sons to say, my dad cared about, he loved my wife, he loved God with Almighty, he loved his wife, and he loved us. And that would be it. That would be a life well lived, I think. Yeah. And I'm grateful for Legatus for giving us that platform to have the courage to jump into the water.
Yeah. So how do you, though, walk that line? Because I think as CEOs and presidents of companies, you constantly have that word liability in your back, as your mind, and it's like, if I say this or do this, I'll get sued. That lawyer's going to come find me, but, in a courtroom. How do you as a CEO, though? I mean, do you give it that level of angst, or do you just live your faith and just let God handle the rest?
I'm making lots of, like anybody in a leadership position, you as well, are making lots of decisions every day. Hundreds, maybe dozens, maybe hundreds of decisions, and empowering other people to make decisions too. And I think the only way we can is we have to set up systems, but we also have to live with whatever happens in that scenario. And I also think we have to assume, in our firms, we assume that a certain small amount of our business is going to leave every year. And we're fortunate it always is less than that number. And I think we have to assume there's going to be some level of potentially liability or litigation for the actions we've taken, and just deal with it. I found over time, that processes work. God is real. The Holy Spirit guides us. And if we made the right decision, to some degree, I've said this, it's taken a while to get there, Stephen, because there was times we didn't have money. There was years we were broke, right? Mm-hmm. And I said to myself, those times I wouldn't be so bold as to say this, but now I say, if those are the consequences if the life I'm living is the consequence of the actions that have financial results, so be it, because I can't be the guy. I can't be at this point in my life. My wife said again, I don't want to be the boy. I want to be the man. And my wife looks at me, right? So I want her to say, and my children, the grandchildren, to say, the decisions he made were consistent with the values that he was trying to espouse to us. Not to be called a hypocrite, but the gifts we're given from God are so magnificent, are so plentiful, that I think if we don't take advantage of those gifts and live in fear is the devil. Mm-hmm. Fear is chirping your ear. I have a friend who says to me all the time, my birthday is January 12th. Elon Musk, or one of the billionaires, was born January 12th, a year before me. And he says, doesn't it make you crazy that he's worth whatever it is, $80 billion? And I said, I don't think that for a moment. I'm blessed beyond all reason. I'm excited about the next opportunity. And I don't think about that. And how could you spend your day thinking about what I don't have, when you and I both been to Mexico City, Chalco, right? Yeah. And we've seen what those kids come in with, nothing.
Nothing.
And they bring the dignity out of them.
They've got all the joy in the world and don't have anything. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's beautiful. When you mentioned your sons are getting into your business now, What's your advice to them if you were to turn the business over tomorrow to them, to one of them? What's your advice to him on
There's two businesses?
Yeah, okay. Either one.
That one.
Yeah,
exactly.
So, what's your advice to them that you wish you would have been told as a 25, 30-year-old CEO, whether it's about business or whether it's about living your faith? Like, here the Spark Note version, son. Do this.
I would say start going to adoration, number one, because I think that's where so much gets clearer. Do that as soon as possible. And absolutely make every decision, not business decision, every significant decision with your wife. I think that's to be really a partnership, not every decision, but absolutely be a partnership with your wife. And I think also don't live on some legacy. I've always been frustrated when people are generational businesses and they say, the business, I was so big. And I've seen guys that are 80 years old still saying, oh, my son is kind of handling things now, but it's really me. They get caught up in the reflection of that. I say, look, I was fortunate enough to move it from the 20-yard line to the 30-yard line. Yeah. If you want to move to the 40, it's great. If you move to the 50, and when they move it to the 30, we need to get out of the way and say, look at what they did. Look at what they did. They were handed a pack of chewing gum and $5, and they turned it into whatever they turned it into. So I think for them, I think it's live faithfully, understand that we make mistakes. I think go to adoration is very important.
Yeah.
And love your wife.
Wow. So Chris, you've been successful. You have a great family in Pittsburgh, and now New York as well.
I like it just to end at Pittsburgh. We're trying
you started the maternity home. You're a big supporter of the Sisters of Life, the Sisters of Mary we talked about in Chalco. Why is it so important for you to now shift to Fox News, and now you're coming out with a show on EWTN? What is the unfinished business you're trying to share with people?
I think it's about capacity. If we have a mutual friend, Eustace Mita, who's a Catholic leader, and I look at all he's done, and it's not a competition, right, at all, but I admire it. And I think to myself, I have extra capacity. I said this morning, we're in the middle of this conference. I think it's funny, Stephen. They called me at 4:45 this morning, today, in this conference, and said, Chris, could you be on the panel at Fox News, which I love doing? And I said, and I'm thinking about it. I said, I'm in New Jersey. They said, you could do it remotely, which means, that would be from 6 to 9 a.m. for 3 hours in a remote location filming their show. And I was about to say yes. And I just sensed my wife from the other side going, Are you kidding me right now? Are you out of your mind? Yeah. We've got many things to do between 6 and 9. So I think it's about capacity. And I think it's also, there's a great guy that I love. His name's Hadi Hanna. He's a Pittsburgh-based real estate guy. It's called Howard Hanna Real Estate. Well, they have, when I was interviewing him for our show on EWTN, thank you for mentioning it, which has come up, the Faith and Finance Report. When I was interviewing him for the show, I really admire him. He's 82, I think. And he came to my office to be filmed, and he was doing things and returning texts. And I said, Hadi, how do you do this? How do you keep going? And he said, it's easy. He said, I have energy. I'm excited. I want to keep doing it. I said, when you started this company, or his parents started it, tell me about the company. He said, well, there was 4 employees, me, college senior, a handyman, my mom, and my dad. And they had little office in Pittsburgh. Today, they have about 20,000 employees. Yeah. They're in 22 states. They're the largest privately held residential real estate privately held real estate firm in the country. And I look at that, and I look at places like Chalco, and the Sisters of Mary, or the Sisters Life, what they're doing, and I'm sure Mother spoke about what they're doing on the main streets in New York to build this. And I say to myself, why can't, if God's given me those gifts, I would love to be like some of these guys I admire, some of the guys in the Papal Foundation that have done unbelievable things. Yeah. I think of Ward Fitzgerald, I think of Eustace Mita, and I think I'm aspirationally, it's not a competition. If we have the capacity and there's things we can do, that's what God's blessed us. And what better blessing is that? Yeah.
Well, and that's the whole purpose of this podcast, the 11 talents. To whom much is given, much is expected. I mean, you have taken your 5 talents, doubled them, and plus some. And we can only hope to aspire to that level that you and so many of the people you mentioned have done. So Chris McMahon, thank you for being on.
Stephen, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thank you.